Hi, and welcome to another fine edition of On the Spot. My name is Ronnie Wiley. If you are a fan of history, you will love this program. Charlie Hughes is a walking history book. Charlie, glad to have you,
Thank you.
on the show. John had given me this paper. There's more that we can add to this on the accomplishments in your life. But first and foremost, you are a Connersville resident,
Yes,
born and raised in Connersville.
right?
1923 when you were born. So Connersville obviously has changed over the past 92 years. Tell us what some of your first memories of Connersville, Fayette County.
Well, I went to school at Fifth Street School, and at that time, Connersville was an up-and-coming city, and every store in the downtown area was filled. There was a business of some sort, even on the side streets, from 3rd and Street to 9th Street, from Eastern to Grand Avenue. There wasn't a storefront empty. Business was good in those days. And then, of course, along came a depression. Well, we survived through that. And by the late 30s, the factories and everything were starting to employ. And then came World War II, and there wasn't an individual to be had for any job, because not only were all the men working that hadn't been drafted, but all the women that wanted a job, which was unique in our history.
Right.
Because women's place was always in the home, you know. Well, in this day and age, we don't think a thing about it, because it all started with World War II.
Yeah. Rosie Rivet, right? Was the mascot Rosie Rivet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our local factories, now we had the American Central was making wings and ailerons for B-24s. Well, they had to have riveters to put those wings and ailerons together. So a good percent of each shift on that job was women. And they made a good wage. And, of course, when the war was over, then the men came home, and the women did such a good job, they didn't want to go back to the household.
Right.
They wanted to keep on working. Well, the flush of the boom hit right after we came home from service. Business was just tremendous in every respect. If you wanted a job, you could get a job.
Right.
And I know of people that went to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, worked till noon, quit that job, and by 1:30 in the afternoon,
Had another one?
they had a job someplace else, because the demand for workers was so strong that they would hire anybody that was able to walk in the office.
Wow.
So, and of course, over the years, they weeded out the bad ones, kept the good ones, but that's just the way it was.
So when you were a little kid, before we get to your military history and your schooling, when you were a little kid, what was it like as a kid in the late 20s, going through that depression? What were your dreams like? Did you want to be a fireman? Did you want to? Actually, what was your career of choice? That's one thing we didn't talk before we went on there. What was your field of choice?
Soldier.
Soldier. Okay. So when you were a little kid, did you think, okay, I want to be a soldier, or what dreams did you have?
Well, of course, I come from a long line of military people. And that was always my choice. Uh, Even as a youngster, I'd sit around and listen to the veterans
Tell the stories.
from the Civil War tell those stories, and you some of the same stories. I hate to say, but they repeat them
Over and over.
over and over, and it's just like it is today. When veterans get together, they tell those same stories. The only thing is they embellish it a little bit more,
Yeah.
And
That's
but,
amazing. You have talked to people who were actually in the Civil War.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we put it in perspective, I mean, you were born in 1923. Civil War was, what, if my math's right, 60 years before that. So you're talking to people in their late 80s, early 90s.
well, you see, our last Civil War veteran in Connersville didn't die until 1940,
That's
and
unbelievable.
he's the only veteran that ever laid in state in the American Legion home.
Wow. What was his name?
Now it won't come to me.
It'll come to you as soon as we get off the air. Amazing.
Yeah,
Again,
he's buried in a cemetery down at Everton.
Yeah,
I visit his grave about every year and put a flag on.
that is amazing that you talk to people who were born in the Civil War. So it seemed like since you came from your family of soldiers that, yes, that's what you wanted to do. How far back does your family go with military service?
The Revolutionary War.
That's
Both
unbelievable.
of my great grandfathers served in the Revolutionary War. Grief Miller was my great grandfather on one side of the family, and David Hughes was a great grandfather on the other side.
Wow.
And David was a long hunter, and he never was in a soldier's uniform, but he worked or hunted with Daniel Boone,
Oh, wow.
and they spent 30 days at the Great Salt Lick down in Kentucky. At that time, Virginia, their territory went clear over the Ohio River, so these guys had the right to come over there.
Right.
And there was a party of 30 of them that came from Virginia over to Great Salt Lick, and part of them did the hunting, part of them salted down the bear and elk and deer, whatever they were, and shipped it back by wagon to the troops.
Wow. It's very fascinating. So obviously, you went to your schools all through Connersville. Where was the high school located at when you graduated?
Harrisburg High School.
Oh, Harrisburg.
Yes.
Okay. So that's right. There was Harrisburg, and then there was an Alquina. So it wasn't
We
necessarily
had
all
county
centralized.
schools
County
at
schools.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you graduated from Harrisburg, and you share with the story that you shared before we went on the air. You were talking about a teacher who said, "Charlie, you need to go into history."
Yeah. Her name was Hope Kerr,
Yeah.
and probably not a finer history teacher that I ever knew. She could quote the lessons right from the book without even opening the book.
Oh, wow.
And she kept asking me, didn't I want to go to college? And I said, no, I want to graduate and get out and make some money. My pockets have been empty so long, I need something in it besides my hands. And so she, unbeknownst to me, she had called Penn State College and got the application forms and everything. And of course, once she got me in there and showed me, I didn't have the heart to turn her down. And but I only was there a year or less, and then the war started. And when I came home for Christmas vacation, the war had started. Well, when I went back, most of the fellows in my classes had already either been drafted or enlisted. And I thought, I'm missing something here. I better go see what it was. So when you're 20 years old, how much do you know?
Yeah, right.
And so I came home, left my car in front of my grandmother's, got on a bus and went to Cincinnati and enlisted the Air Force. And my folks didn't even know where I was
Oh,
because
wow.
I didn't want them to know
That you were going to war.
till, well, at that time, you had to either have your parents' consent or you had to be 21.
Oh, and you weren't 21 yet?
No.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, if they find out where I'm at, I'm never going to get in the Army because they'll take me home.
Now, you were in the Air Force. Did you pick that branch, or did they pick it
No,
for you?
I picked it.
You picked it. Okay. All right. So, obviously December 7th was the day that lived in
Yeah.
infamy. My December 7th is 9/11. I remember all the emotions going through when 9/11 happened. Tell me where you were and what was going through your mind when Pearl Harbor was attacked.
I just come out of the movie with my best friend. His name was Fred Wood. And Fred later was a medical technician in the 325th Glider Division of the 82nd Airborne.
Oh, wow.
But when we came out of the movie, the old auditorium theater, there was a boy on the corner hawking the Indianapolis newspapers, and we bought one, and we had no idea, like so many people, where in the world is Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
And surely them little old toy makers over there is not going to pile on us. But we was wrong, they did.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah. So when you got that news, and you talked about going back to school, and you said you felt like you were missing something. Is it because of that ingrained in your family that, hey, this is our duty as not only Americans but family tradition?
Well, I guess I don't know really. The thing was, if they can do it, I can do it. I'm not sure just what the reason was. Maybe it's because I'm just too dumb to realize what it was all about.
Well, God bless you for your service,
But,
even back then.
It was, but I've thought 1,000 times about it, and I've been blessed that I chose the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think so. And have your children in military service?
I have no children.
Oh, no children. Okay. So when you went to, how long were you in the Air Force?
I was in 4 years.
4 years. So you were there pretty much the rest of the war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when the war ended in '45, when the war ended and your service was over, where did life take Charlie Hughes?
Back to Connersville.
Back to now. Did you want to get out and never come back when you left, or were you like, okay, I need to come back?
I had a very good chance. I was the discharge center, and the major from my old outfit, who was also my commanding officer and also my plane captain, made a trip up to Augusta, Georgia, where I got discharged, and tried to talk me into re-enlist. And he was taking a squadron of P-38s to Kunming, China, and I almost jumped at the chance, but I haggled with him. I said, Major, the only way I'll go if I get a jumping grade. And I was a gunnery sergeant at the time. And he said, no, I can't do that. I said, you're the boss man of this group. You can do it. And he wouldn't give in, and neither would I. So the next morning, he shook hands and went his way. And, you know, when I got to reading about the Korean War, when the Chinese came across and invaded North Korea, one of the first places they attacked was Kunming, China.
Oh, wow.
And those guys, I heard later, bugged out with just what they had on.
Wow.
They were right ahead of getting slaughtered. They lost everything, all the equipment, planes and everything. It just,
Unbelievable.
but I still think in my mind, I wish I'd gone.
So you come back to Connersville, you're 22, 23 years old. Did you go back to school immediately, or did you go right back to work? Did you ever finish your education?
No, both my grandparents were sick, and there wasn't anybody to take care of them. And I just felt it was my duty because they helped raise me, and it's just one of those things.
Wow.
And so I just went back to work. But Stans had been awful good to me. They had paid my time while I was in college. They kept my job open, and when I came back, they brought me right back into the fold. And it was, I think, one of the best places in the world for a guy like me to work.
Awesome. So, funny story. You were talking about all the shops down through Central Avenue. You used to patrol those spots, didn't you, when you were in Constable? Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Well, my grandfather was hired by the Merchants Association. At that time, there wasn't a Chamber of Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
You had a Merchants Association. And so each of the merchants paid so much a week to have a watchman, and that's what it was. You started out about dark, and you checked the front and the back doors, and if it was display lights to be lit. A lot of the stores in those early years had display lights, and they had a box on the outside, and you were issued a key, and you turned them on at a certain time of the evening. Then next time you came around, maybe like 10 o'clock, you turned them off. And then you made periodically rounds till early morning. You thought it was safe to go home, so that's what you done.
So, any interesting things that you may have saw? Because from what I've heard, there used to be like bars and all through Central Avenue. So I'm sure there was a lot of late night stuff going on.
Well, when you've got lots of money, there's lots of things going on. And you usually found them in those bars
Oh, yeah.
because at that time in our history, the bars stayed open till 3:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as they used to say, the decent people were home in bed
Yeah.
long before that
That's right.
hour, and only the idiots and the fools were
We're
out
out.
after midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several of these bars where they were fights and disputes nightly.
Oh, wow.
And you almost had to have a police car or a patrolman standing out in front because you knew sooner or later
Something was going to happen.
there's going to, and I had several incidents where a fella tried to choke me once
Oh,
because I tried to arrest him, and unfortunately I had to.
take him in.
Well, no, I had to take him to the hospital.
Oh,
I laid his head open with,
oh
with
wow.
a blackjack.
Wow. So you defended yourself pretty good. Wow.
Well, I didn't like for my shirt to be torn open.
Yeah, I guess that's good.
And
So I mean, you're still pretty active. You're a Kiwanian
yeah,
with the Kiwanians. Tell us about the cemetery. You do a lot with the cemetery and how that got started.
well, in 1983, Harry Smith and I, and Harry and I have been longtime friends, old Civil War buddies, did an awful lot of traveling together. But I asked him about whether we couldn't do something about that cemetery. It was in a terrible shape. The tombstones were turned over, grass needed mowed. There was several dead trees in there. And I said, our veterans need more than that.
And that's the city cemetery between Grand and Western?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, it's right in the heart of the city, and frankly, it looks like hell.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, who can we get to do it? And I said, well, you and I can start. So we started working over there, cleaning the stones, trying to reset some. And then we got, what's her name from the library? Hell, I can't think of her name.
I don't remember either.
She's a librarian, but she joined us, and the three of us worked over there, and we got it in pretty good shape. And then we got some more people involved, and of course, then Harry died. Paulette Hayes was the
Oh,
woman.
okay. Who
And-
would come to you?
Paulette passed away. Well, I recruited two good fellows.
And they do they continue on this day
Yeah.
helping out?
And we got a number of other people.
Now, how many tours do you do? Do you still conduct the cemetery tours?
Yes.
About how many do you do? Weekly, monthly, or is
No,
it just
twice.
seasonally?
Twice a year.
Oh,
Most
twice
of
a year.
the time.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it's like it's not by an appointment. It's
Yeah.
just twice a year.
Now,
Okay.
if anybody wanted to tour the cemetery, we could we'll do it
Set
for
some up.
them. Yeah, it's like the museum. You know, we're only open certain hours at the museum, but if anybody wants a tour of the museum, we'd be glad to help them.
Yeah, and so from what I understand, there's a Medal of Honor. Tell us about the Fayette County only Medal of Honor winner. Is he buried in the city cemetery?
No, he's not buried in City Cemetery. He's he's buried out at Lion Station,
Oh, okay.
which is south of Springersville. And his name is William Cubberly.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, he was a Medal of Honor recipient that got lost in the shuffle, because when he was awarded the citation for the medal in 1868, the Indian Wars were still on.
Oh, wow.
So the government said they would wait till the wars were over before they awarded the medal. Well, the wars didn't end until 2 years later, but a year later, he was kicked by a mule in the head and was given a medical discharge. He came home and waited till he died in 1919. Never heard one word from the government, never received his medal. The only
Really?
thing he ever received was a citation. And in 2006, the Medal of Honor Society found out about it, and they published a notice. Well, in 2010, I found out about it, and I went out to check, and there was nothing on his grave, no indication that he had served in any manner. So I contacted the Medal of Honor Society a number of times, and finally got him his medal. It's the bronze plaque on his grave states that
He's a medal.
he is a Medal of Honor recipient.
Awesome. You know, I tell you, believe it or not, our 30 minutes is almost up. And I don't even think I got even halfway on this list. I love history. I know a lot of people do. And Connersville is obviously, Fayette County's obviously changed in the last 90 plus years since
Yes.
you've been on this earth and walked here. Any final words about maybe what you foresee, maybe what you would like to see the future of Connersville?
I'd like to see it come back and be the city that it was, where you could walk down the streets and you wouldn't see these empty storefronts, and people be working. That is one of the most important things that this community needs now, is jobs for
That's
the
right.
people. So I don't know how it can come about, but I keep thinking our country has been down,
But we can bring it back up.
but we've always been able to come back.
All right. Charlie, God bless you. You know, John, we may have to have him back. We may have to have him back with pictures, with some pictures of your family and of the past of Connersville. God bless you guys. Thank you very much for joining us for another edition of On the Spot. We'll see you next month.